All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Loose Lugs. I'm Chris Osborne. He's Dustin Lewis. We are the duo. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm doing all right, man. How about yourself?
Good. It's a good Monday. Powered by, I forgot to say this, powered by Sports and Culture Media, but presented by ASAP Sports Network. ASAP has shows on Tiki Live TV, YouTube, Facebook Live, their website, which is always a good place to watch us, asapsports.com, I believe. But they also have a channel on the Roku channel. I mean, they're doing crazy good things. I'm really proud to be a part of what they're doing. Let's dive into the meat of the episode.
Yes.
What a race.
Let's do this. Absolutely. What a race.
A lot of things to talk about. Where do you want to start off? Congrats to Austin Cindric, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair enough. Congrats are in order.
A great race. He ran everything the way he was supposed to. He was in position to win when it counted. Can't really say much negative about it. I was reading comments. People were upset that he put Blaney in the wall, but that's what you do to win a Daytona 500.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I would do the same thing. As Tony Stewart says, he'd wreck his own mother. I would too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom. It's the Daytona 500, you know?
Exactly. Once you cross that start-finish line to go on the final lap, you are for yourself and nobody else.
Yep. And I mean, there was some that, they're still saying Bubba should have been penalized. But if you look at the replay, he was forced down there by contact with Austin Cindric. And when Cindric went up to block Blaney and then came back down, he got into Bubba. I saw nothing wrong with anything that happened there at the end of the race. I thought, the people that were in position to win raced fairly clean for everything. I do want to, let's talk about Brad Keselowski's bump drafting because there's a lot of people upset about that. But I'll let you. What's your perspective? Do you think he was too aggressive? Do you think he was? What do you think?
I don't think he was too aggressive. We saw all race long that these cars were able to bump draft. If you look at last year's car, bump drafting was something you could do, but you had to be very perfect with it. This car is kind of like that, but it's way more forgiving with that diffuser. I think Keselowski was just doing what he could to try and keep that leading car up front. And he made a few bad bumps, and I mean, what else is he supposed to do? He's trying to win a race.
I would go back to the last time they allowed tandem drafting to really be legal, and most of those years were the Car of Tomorrow. And if you recall tandem racing then, that's how you tandem raced. You'd have one car in front and one car off to the side to get air, but also, so you didn't have to detach. But also that's where the best bumping was on a corner, because if you hit them square in the middle through the turn, it would take all the air off of the spoiler and make these guys loose. So this car's a little different. I don't blame Brad because that's how he raced when they had tandem racing. I mean, he's always done it to where you stick the car out a little bit, get some air in your nose so you don't have to detach. You can push longer. I don't think it was aggressive. Harrison Burton wreck. It wasn't just Brad that did that. There was other incidents where guys were just getting loose. There was a lot of excessive bumping. And I feel bad for Harrison. He had a really fast car. He had kind of won me over that he might have a chance at winning this thing, but it happens. I wouldn't fault anybody for that kind of racing. Now with
Like,
6 to go and bumping Ricky Stenhouse like that, I'd do it too. I mean,
mhm.
Ricky can say what he wants in the media. He wanted that bump. Nobody's going to say they didn't want that bump.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, you think about we watched it all Sunday. When you saw these guys bumping each other, it wasn't when they'd hit the middle, that car wasn't getting loose. You'd watch the front guy kind of kind of catch the car a little bit when you feel a bump.
yep.
I mean, they can't be perfect. A bump's going to go wrong if if both those guys make mistakes. If he doesn't hit perfect on the back bumper, if he overcorrects, I mean, it's going to go wrong.
Yeah, it just ended up being Brad Keselowski both times. But it
Yeah.
easily could have been anybody else. And if I'm behind, I'm pushing the same way.
Hmm.
Because if I can push you out of the way and put you in the lead, I'm passing you too.
Absolutely.
So,
That's how Blaney and Cindric were running up front. You'd watch them push down the back straightaway, get 5 car lengths ahead of them, back off a little bit, then link up again.
yeah.
That's how you tandem draft with these cars. They figured it out.
Yeah, it was a good race. In my Daytona 500 preview, I really predicted smaller packs, and we didn't get that, and that was good. I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad we saw a lot more racy style instead of the small packs pulling away. Um, we were on point though with our prediction about it being a Ford. I mean, they dominated.
Oh, yeah,
Kevin
definitely.
Harvick wasn't the guy, which I said Kevin Harvick. I think you said Ryan Blaney.
For people who haven't won a 500 yet, or
I think that was just your overall pick for the 500 was Ryan Blaney.
I think it was two, if memory serves me right. And I
Yeah.
wasn't that far off.
You were closer than I was,
Well,
but
I look at how he's driven the 500s he's had raced in. The,
yeah,
the kid knows Daytona. He knows how to do really good at Daytona.
yeah, he did really well. He does really well at all the play tracks. I mean, he drafts well. He's got great equipment to back up the confidence to make the moves that he makes, and he's smart in his decision making. He doesn't wait for somebody to help him. He's his own help, and
Yep.
that's what makes him great. I do want to talk about the wheels that were confiscated.
Yes.
Roush Fenway Kozlowski Racing had both cars, both sets of wheels um, confiscated. Penske, all 3 of theirs confiscated. So basically, they were drilling holes in, I believe, in the back of the tie in the wheel well. Let me double check on that because I may have read it wrong.
Drilling holes in the
Um,
back of the wheel well.
it was they were drilling holes in something. Before I sound like an idiot, let me RFK.
I read the NASCAR news story when it popped up, and I remember it saying that they were confiscated, but I can't remember who it was that reported to motorsports.com, but he said that the wheels probably didn't have an effect on how the Thursday dual races would have went. That's
Yeah.
what I took from it.
Let's see. It's not exactly saying on here, but I think I've read somewhere that they were drilling holes in section of the tire.
Hmm.
Okay, wheel modification. Here we go. We had contact NASCAR a week before and said that the wheels we were getting were not the same. We felt we needed to modify the holes where the drive pins go in.
Oh,
So it is the wheel itself, not the tire.
wasn't there a
Anyway,
few issues with drive pins in the race? I remember some wheels coming
yeah.
off, and that was the reason.
Well, the other issue they were having, uh, the Justin Haley's tire that came off, uh, and you saw it with Joey Logano's pit stop. they were using the gun and it was attaching it, but it wasn't securing it all the way. The guns were actually having a malfunction because now when they do the pit stop, they hit it and the bolt stays on the gun, which is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And then they replace the tire and they go back in. I think what was happening was the mechanism that holds the lug on the gun wasn't releasing it properly, so it wasn't able to torque down enough. Because if you go back and look at Joey Logano's pit stop when they showed the replay, I mean, he was just hitting it, and it wasn't tightening the wheel. And I think the same thing happened to Justin Haley's car and Kaz Grala's car, but they lost their wheel. They didn't,
Mm-hmm.
stay and fix it or whatever. But
That's
so
interesting.
it happens, especially with new teams. Unfortunately, both those teams are new teams. Kaz Grala driving for the money team, the money racing team, Floyd Mayweather's car, and then Collie Racing moving up. That's a new team.
Mm-hmm.
They're 31. Anyway, the penalties though, I kind of expect, according to the new rule book, for this to be an L2 penalty, which is it's a hefty penalty this year. I'll cover the penalties that NASCAR can hand down. So L2 is defined as modification to single source next gen parts, not rising to level 3 infraction, which it's not. Level 3 is basically exchanging parts or counterfeiting parts.
Wow.
Yeah, so if they say at L2, which L1 is just a post race failure to meet minimum weight, team source parts not meeting the NASCAR rules, which it's not. They modified it. It's different. Failures in the submission and approval process of parts. They could say it's that. I really think they're going to get them for modification on both. So just going over the L1 penalty, points deduction 20 to 75 points. And this would be per team because all 5 cars had this, both the RFK cars, all 3 of the Penske cars. Playoff deductions 1 to 10 points, suspension of 1 crew member 1 to 3 races, and fines 25,000 to 100,000. That's L1.
Ugh.
I think the L2 penalty, which is what they're going to get, modification to single source next gen part, point deduction 75 to 120 points, playoff deduction 10 to 25, suspension of 1 or 2 crew members from 4 to 6 races, and fine up to $250,000. And this could be per car, by the way.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. So,
Ouch. That
like
hurts.
I said, I feel like it's going to be an L2. They may slap them with an L1 and say, look, this is new penalty format. We're going to give you guys a break. But even then, they're losing at a minimum of 20 points each, 1 playoff point, 1 race suspension for a crew member, and $25,000. Those are the minimum that they can, they may not do anything. They may say, whatever, but I can't see them doing that because then they're basically saying, we know you were trying to do something. I mean, let's face it, they were definitely doing something somewhat shady.
Yeah.
They didn't get this approved before they did it on the car. They let NASCAR know they didn't get an approval. So I really think that's going to be an issue for them. We'll find out in the next few weeks. I think they work on it this week as far as looking at the tires at R&D, but they're going to have to put it on a car and test it to see if they actually had an advantage or, something.
Yeah.
What do you feel should happen?
I mean, the thing is that had they asked, I don't think NASCAR would have done anything drastic. They probably would have said, okay, whatever. It's just the first race. We're working out some kinks. You thought you did what you thought was probably you're doing something that's probably needs to happen. Whatever. But the fact they went ahead and did it and didn't ask. I mean, I don't want to say NASCAR will make an example out of them. I mean, they changed the whole penalty system, and they're going to okay, you are our example. this is going to be how it is for the rest of the season. I think they're going to hit him with some sort of penalty. L2 probably, because I mean, what they did fits that description. That,
Right.
mhm.
I would say perspective wise, if the Fords that use the parts go out and absolutely struggle in the Daytona 500, I think that they definitely get something, some kind of penalty because they still look the same strength, because they still won the race. It may not be as bad because I feel like, behind the scenes, NASCAR is saying, okay, you guys really screwed up. But from what we want things to look like on the outside, you guys didn't lose anything. You were still strong. We're going to let it go. And I feel like that's an actual conversation that goes on behind closed doors
That makes
because
sense.
it's not good for NASCAR to, image wise say, yeah, you cheated somewhat. We'll call it cheating, even though it may or may not be. We're going to say you cheated um, and you lost positions because we took your cheated parts. Then NASCAR has to do something.
Mhm.
But because they still won, I think they may. It could go either way. I'm already sounding on the fence because I am. To me, it's an
Yeah,
L2 penalty. But what is it to NASCAR? That's the real question.
yeah, I agree.
Other thing we were going to talk about, yeah, the Chevys. I was quite disappointed, and I
Mm,
think we said this last week. They always qualify well, which they did.
hmm
They do not run well in the Daytona 500, which they didn't. I mean, other than Ricky Stenhouse, name a Chevy that looked like they could actually win that race. I got none.
Yeah, I had actually said this to Dad because me and Dad and Mom we were watching the race, and Dad commented that the Fords were looking really, really strong. I said Chevys have single car qualifying pace. You can't beat them. They're fast. Fords have insane draft potential. You get a bunch of Fords together, watch them do something. And then he said, "Well, what do Toyotas have?" I said, "Coordination. You watch
Great
how the
drive.
Toyotas get together."
They have great drivers, and those great drivers share that information. I mean, Denny Hamlin's won 3 Daytona 500s, and he's a really good plate racer. Kyle
Absolutely.
Busch is a two-time champion. He's won a lot of races. Martin Truex Jr. is a champ, but he doesn't have any, Daytona 500 wins, but he's been there. He's been inches away more than once. So
hmm
as a team, they have experience, which is something they have over most.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, sorry. So I was disappointed. Even the Toyotas looked stronger. I mean, Truex won both stages. I really thought this would be his best chance to get the win. I'm not sold on him being in that car next year. I kind of feel like this is his last season, and we've talked about it with Ty Gibbs coming up. The big question mark to me is, Eminem's is not coming back to Kyle Busch's car next year. It doesn't mean Kyle's not going to be in that car. He's still under contract, I believe, until 2024, and I'm gonna check on that as I say that because I
I know
saw
M&M's is gone after this year. I think.
yes,
Yeah.
they're gone. Um, which they've been in the sport a really long time. I mean, they were Kyle Busch's sponsor when he was with Hendrick, but even
hmm
way before then, I mean, Ernie Irvan had an M&M's car.
Yep.
So it's one of those things. Sponsors come and go, and they've been one of the longest running sponsors. Um, let's see.
Absolutely.
Kyle Busch.
I'll say this while you're looking that up. At the end of stage two, you talking about Truex winning, sweeping the stages except for the last stage, obviously. But at the end of stage two, Chase Briscoe, he was going to try to stay on the lead lap, so he got in front of the leaders. 200 IQ play to Joey Logano. Keselowski went to the inside to try and lap Briscoe, but Keselowski stayed
Yeah,
right behind Briscoe.
I know what you're talking about.
Genius.
Yeah,
Genius move.
yeah. And I have issues with Briscoe there. You do not jump in front of the pack to keep your lap. That could have caused. I mean, I know he had a small pack following him, and he wasn't. The speed difference wasn't huge, but you don't just pull up in front of the train.
Hmm.
And I tweeted during the race, and I tagged Tony Stewart. I tagged Chase Briscoe. Maybe they see it. Hopefully, Tony needs to talk to him and tell him, look, there's some stupid things you can do. That's not one of them.
Hmm.
He could have caused a huge wreck. He definitely bunched up the group by doing that. I mean, he was probably 2 or 3 miles an hour slower at that point, and it's not like he got over in front of a teammate. He didn't have a teammate there.
Exactly.
Um, I mean, their team was once Harvick was out, that team was gone anyway. Eric Almirola was in the hunt for a little while, um, but he never really showed he had a great car.
Yeah.
Cole Custer did his typical running at the tail end of the lead lap thing. I don't see how he's still in that ride. Uh,
Mm.
it's a win at Kentucky a couple years ago, and he's, you know, on cloud nine, but he's got a lot to prove if he wants to be in that car next year. Kyle Busch's contract is up at the end of this year, so I was wrong. The
Ooh.
2024 contract is, I believe, Denny Hamlin's. I'm gonna check on that too. One of them has a contract. Yeah, it is Denny Hamlin. I was gonna say
Okay.
one of them I saw had a longer term contract. Um, Truex's contract's up after this year too.
You got two guys with contracts running up at the end of the year.
And Christopher Bell, but he's not going anywhere.
Mm.
Uh, Kyle Busch isn't going anywhere. He's not going to retire. Um, he's still got a lot left in the tank. Plus, he wants to get more wins. He wants to start passing people on that all-time list, and he's not that far behind from getting in the top 10.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, more power to him. Get more wins while he's still here.
yeah. I'm actually going to look that up so I can see how many he needs to get in the top 10. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. None. He's number 10.
Oh, wow. So he is in the
He
top 10.
Yeah, he just got into the top 10
Nice.
last year sometime.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah, Harvick is ninth with 58, so maybe he pushes Harvick to. They're not going to get to 76. I mean, Harvick, I feel like he's in his last few years. I would say maybe this year and next year, and maybe Harvick looks at hanging it up. Now, we talked about him and Kurt Busch are the only drivers still racing that were even in the 2002 Daytona 500.
Hmm.
I firmly believe this is Kurt Busch's last year. He ventured over and he's helping out Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan's 2311 racing team, and that's great. But he's not going to long term stay. He's not going to 4 or 5 year stay. I mean, he's a prior champ. He's been there and he's done that. He's won a lot of races. I think it's his last ride. I think him and Truex are on their way out this year. And then Ty Gibbs will step in next year and take over that 19. Riley Herbst will take over for Kevin Harvick eventually.
Eventually. Yeah, I mean, I agree with those picks to be in those cars. I mean,
Well,
Ty Gibbs in the Xfinity race, he looked pretty good there for a while. I thought. I
that was
mean,
his.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just
No,
gonna say
no.
it's his first ever restrictor plate race. I don't think he did any restrictor plate races last year.
That was I think it was a point in the Xfinity race that he had no prior restrictor plate racing,
Right.
and I mean, he did really good for having no experience. He did a very good job keeping
You
himself
give that kid
composed.
a bunch of turns and he's gonna beat you though. Like his bread and butter is finessing the car, brake gas. I mean, wide open is kind of anybody's game, and he still did really well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
Let's see. Something else we were talking about. Pros and cons of the next gen car. I
Okay.
can see some pros. The racing was good. It had its moments. Cons,
Yeah.
the diffuser in the back's making for less drag, and I think that was the biggest thing is these cars could not get close enough in big packs to really push the way they needed to. What about you? What do you got?
Yeah, I had the same opinion as you. The diffusers, even though they clean up a lot of the dirty air the problem that we've had for the past few years, cleaning up, guiding it to the next car. When the cars would hook up, so let's just say down the back straightaway, they didn't hook up for very, very long. It was maybe 2 seconds at the very most, and then they'd have to split up. And you saw a lot of guys when they got on the in-car cam and they had the telemetry up. You would watch them go in the corner, full throttle. They get in the middle of the corner, you'd hear the car bog down a little bit, and then you'd watch the telemetry, the throttle map kind of lift.
Yeah.
And then they get back on the throttle because they don't want to hit the guy in front of them coming off the corner because that's when the car is going to be at its lightest. So if they hit them right there, they're wrecking. But I mean, overall, the car raced really good. It took a while for me to get used to how wide these cars look going down the straightaways and the number placement, but that's besides the point. The car raced really good. When you had a run and you drop below the guy or go to the high side, even if you had help, you could go around that guy pretty easily.
Yeah.
I like it.
That
I just want
side
to see what.
diffuser is a lot of the reason for that. In the old days, even last year's car, when you got up to beside somebody, I mean, they could slow you down with any kind of decent side draft, and that side diffuser is really, I think, helping.
Hmm. Absolutely.
This race coming up at Fontana, there you're going to see, I think, the pros and cons really in full action because these cars are made for these kind of tracks. The dirty. It's been a few years since we've been to Fontana, but if you remember, one of the biggest complaints with the Gen 6 car at Fontana, at Michigan, dirty air. You take the air off the nose of these cars and they bulldoze. They don't handle well.
Hmm.
This car was designed for those races. So when you're trying to make a pass, you don't get you can follow them and you're not going to get your entire downforce taken away. So I'm excited for this race. I wouldn't say it's going to be a better race than the Daytona race, but I think it's going to be more entertaining from start to finish. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah,
honestly, Daytona's a little boring at times.
yeah. There's a few boring moments, especially I want to say right in the middle of stage 1 and 2. It kind of got boring. They kind of got the single file and was just starting to log the laps down a little bit here and there. But when they decided to go double file, that is when you saw these guys really start to go, okay, we're trying to go to the front.
Yeah. The Atlanta race is going to be really good too, with the new tracks resurfacing, the new configuration. You put the new car on there. I think it's going to be a really good race. That might be I don't want to say it'll be a race. You might see the record for lead changes at Atlanta, but I'd put money on it because that new configuration, you can run low, you can run high now. I mean, the thing with Atlanta for a long time now, if you're running anywhere with the bottom, you're wearing out your tires.
Hmm.
So now with the configuration, with the progressive banking, I think guys can run just as well up high and probably not lose as much on tires. So you're going to see some great racing.
Hmm.
But let's talk Fontana. Let's finish that preview. Um, it's a little hard to do a preview. I have no idea. You could say Ford all day, but we don't know how the Ford chassis is going to do. This is a lifting track. You do, lift for a second or two in turns 1 and 2. 3 and 4, you can almost go wide open until you're almost halfway through a fuel run, I think.
Yeah.
I would pick Toyotas if I had to pick. I would say one of the Gibbs guys because they've always run well at Fontana.
One of the Gibbs guys would probably be my second pick. And now, granted, Daytona and Fontana, they're two different tracks. Daytona's flat out. It's a super speedway. Fontana's a 2-mile D-shaped oval.
Yep. I know it's hard because, in the past, if this was 2021, I would probably just jump up there and say, hey, a Chevy's going to win this race. It's probably going to be Chase Elliott because we have statistics to fall back on. We got nothing. We have one race, Daytona. Actually, two, the Clash. And if you want to count the Clash, I mean, that makes it 0 wins for everyone else except for Ford. They've literally won everything.
Yep. That's true. They've won everything. They have a 100% perfect track record right now.
And Joey Logano is pretty good at California too,
He is, but
I'm not picking a Ford. It's got to be somebody else, man. Anything but a Ford right now.
I don't think a Ford is going to win Fontana. I really don't. You saw how good they were at Daytona drafting together. I mean, Fontana, you can draft. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can draft. And with these cars, you could probably follow pretty good. But what happens when you have no one to draft with? How good is that Ford going to be with no draft help? Go ahead.
The Aero front end is going to determine a lot because this is going to be much more of a downforce track than Daytona. And if the Ford might have a little more trouble aero wise, we have no idea. So if I'm going to do some kind of preview, I'll just say a Toyota, Martin Truex Jr. I just pick him.
That's a good pick.
It's a gut feeling. Nothing, no statistical advances, no going into the future and betting on it kind of stuff. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah. I'm going to say I'm going with the defending champ. I have to. I have a reason. Granted, this was back in the Gen 6. This could be completely different, but when they went to Fontana for a few years, when he was in Chip Ganassi's 42, it was every race they went there. He was in the hunt. At one point, can't remember what year it was. I think it may have been 2014, I want to say. They had the doubleheader, Xfinity and the Cup Series at Fontana, and Larson won the Xfinity Series, and he won the Cup Series.
Oh yeah,
against Kyle Busch, just a day apart. I'm going with Larson. I'm going with him. Lock it in.
I like it. It should be better racing though. Overall, I really do feel like it'll be good racing, good solid racing with the new front ends, the new. If you haven't seen the biggest difference in this year's car and last year's car, the tire wells is a huge difference. In the old car, everything was flush down the side. Mm-hmm. On this car, those tire wells stick out a good bit, and that's by design. That's to get air on those tire wells and add downforce. And they couldn't add more downforce from the spoiler. The biggest thing there was when somebody gets behind you, you're taking that away. So by adding more downforce from the deck lid, you're only allowing it to be taken away more. So I like the tire well adjustment, and we're going to see just how much of a difference that makes. Let's see. Odd broadcast from FS1. I totally agree. You're talking about the ARCA race?
I'm talking about it in general. Just a few nitpick things. You saw it in the Clash. There was a few small things. Yeah.
That was
it
awful.
Was just poorly run. The 500 they did better. they did better, but it's not hard to improve on what they did in the Clash. There were a few angles that could have been better. When they kept replaying Harrison Burton's flip, they kept using that camera that mounts like right on the splitter of the car. What the heck you seen with that? Every time they would do that, you'd always see the back bumper of the other car, and then you would finally see Harrison Burton flipping. Like, get that camera on the front straightaway, zoom in, and then see that car flip. You want a good replay? There's your replay. Don't give me this little camera on the splitter where all I see is the rear diffuser of the leading car.
And I'm glad you said flipping. That reminds me of the Harrison Burton crash. I was going to say, if that crash happened with last year's car, that car would have been totally demolished.
Mm-hmm.
And when he flipped and flipped back over, it looked to me like you could have duct taped that car and gone back out.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked great. And I think if that was the Gen 6 car, we'd be talking about, how many pieces they had to pick up off the concrete,
A red
Uh,
flag.
Yeah, definitely. And we didn't get a red flag until the end. So I think that's, a safety innovation. The hard work they put into making these cars safer, it's showing. And then there was a few wrecks that I thought to myself, if that was last year's car, it would have been worse. So I will give them props. Like William Byron hitting the inside wall at that speed. That car didn't look that
Mm-hmm.
bad when he was done either.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Yeah, he hit that wall, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna hurt." And then I saw the front, and I was like,
It wasn't
He
bad.
went it. He hit that wall hard, and it looks like he hit it at like 100 miles an hour. It
Yeah.
barely like get a hammer. You might fix that thing. You can go out and finish the race.
And I'm not going to say he carried the same amount of speed that Kyle Busch did, but Kyle Busch broke both of his front legs in a crash just like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, what was that, 2016?
16. That was the Xfinity race. That was the first Xfinity Series race for the season. And he spun coming out of the trial, and he hit head first, same angle. I mean, the wreck almost looked identical, just different parts of the racetrack.
He's lucky he didn't lose his legs. I mean, the crushed panel was what broke his legs, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he had his feet on the pedals and it shoved everything forward. Okay, so Mike Joy, Tony Stewart, and Clint Boyer. What do you think? Was that a good trio?
I love that trio. I really did. It kind of reminds me of how Mike Joy, Darrell Waltrip, and Larry McReynolds used to be when they were in the booth together. You
Yeah.
had Mike Joy, who was the serious analyst. You kept everybody under control, kept the good pace. Then you have Larry McReynolds, who I would say would be Tony Stewart in this case. He's a former crew chief. Larry McReynolds, Tony Stewart's a former driver. They have good banter. They can say things out of left field and make you laugh, but they're just as serious as Mike Joy. They got a little color to them. And then you have Clint Boyer and Darrell Waltrip, the oddballs.
Right.
They'll make you laugh. They love their NASCAR. They're witty. I'm telling you, if Fox keep them guys in the booth together, I think you're gonna have some good moments this year. I really do.
I think I heard him say that Tony Stewart might be back later this year for one more event.
Yes.
I
Perfect.
know it was a good combo, which Tony Stewart, he's a smart mouth. And
That's an understatement.
he's a lot like me. Like when I'm not on here, everything that comes out of my mouth is sarcastic or to make fun of you. And that's Tony Stewart for you. So I enjoy his banter. I mean, they asked him on that last restart, well, where would you be on this last restart? Up here with you guys. And I was like, yeah, amen.
I agree.
I mean,
absolutely
you pick a
agree.
spot and tell me it's going to work out.
But yeah, I mean, I love them three guys in the booth. I love the banter between Stewart and Boyer. Like when the racing was a little dull, started to get dull, they kept you entertained. They found a way to keep you entertained.
Yeah, they did. And they have insightful stuff. I mean, Tony drove for a long time. He's, 3-time champ. But he's a car owner, so he's always stayed in the loop. He knows what goes on behind closed doors. He's Been there, done that. So he's a very insightful person, period. Clint Boyer, even if Clint had never driven a race car, his personality alone makes him the perfect guy for that job.
Mhm.
Um, so I liked it. I hope he does come back for a few events this year. I would like to see Mike Joy, Clint Boyer team up with. Now I can't think of his name. The guy that is always on pit road for NBC.
Oh Lord.
And I have a video. I took a video. I saw him at Talladega, and I can't think of. I'm an awful person.
I'm trying to think too. Golly.
His dad
NBC.
was a big time NASCAR broadcaster. Hang on, because
Goodness.
he will come up as soon as I NASCAR pit reporter.
I'm stumped.
Dave Burns. Jeez, Dave Burns. I should have known that.
There you go.
It would be nice to get Dave Burns, who I know he can't because he works for NBC, but he's that energetic personality. I think him and Clint would really bounce off each other really well. And NBC Sports is gone. I mean, they don't cover NASCAR anymore. So I don't know that Dave Burns is still with the group or if he was able to find a new spot. It would be great to see him doing something different. I mean, I prefer NBC just because of Dale Jr.
Hmm.
I don't like Jeff Burton. His commentary is very dry. He's loud sometimes. I don't know if you notice that, but he can be loud.
Hmm.
It's weird. Anyway, anything else we need to cover?
If you had to give this Daytona 500 a rating out of 10, what would you give it?
Can I explain?
Yeah,
Or
go
just
right
give me a
ahead.
number?
No, go right ahead. Explain.
6.
6.
6.
Really?
And I'll explain. It
Okay.
would actually be lower if it hadn't been Austin Cindric that won. That makes it a 6 instead of a 5.
Mhm.
The racing at times was very boring. I mean, you get side by side, and I know the strategy is to, always be moving forward. This race didn't offer a lot of forward. I mean, Brad Keselowski led a lot of laps. Ryan Blaney led a few. But this race was dominated by the same 2 or 3 people leading the entire thing, and a couple guys getting a few laps here and there.
Mhm.
So, did NASCAR succeed in giving the little guys the advantage? I mean, if you look at the results, no. You look at
Yeah.
the race in general, they were able to mix it up. But when push came to shove, this was just like every other Daytona 500. The car at the end was the dominant car if it wasn't wrecked in the infield.
Yeah.
So I say a 6, and then this is going to sound awful of me, but the big wrecks were not big wrecks.
Yes, I will agree with that 100%.
So I feel kind of cheated on that. I feel like we need to go back and wreck a few more. But I don't know. It's part of plate racing. You want to see the big wreck. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. You want to
Of
see a big
course.
wreck.
Yeah.
And instead, we saw a bunch of small wrecks that were inconsequential. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm gonna sound bad, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I actually rated this race as like a 7.5 out of 10. The only reason I gave it a passing grade, it's a C, but it's a passing grade. I like the fact that these cars drafted fairly well. I like the fact that you could bump draft. It seemed like these guys, they kind of started to get the feel for these cars, and then you saw Cindric and Blaney figure it out right away that okay, we can push down the back straightaway, can push going into turn one, and
Right.
then at the very end, you saw Bubba Wallace and Kyle Busch start to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, oh, this is getting now. We got 4 cars that are on in the same mindset with each other. They're going to wreck. I just know it. And unfortunately, fortunately they didn't wreck. But I mean, overall, I thought the racing was good, so I gave it a passing grade.
I would like to tip my hat though to two guys. You mentioned Kyle Busch. I mean, he knew his car wasn't going to win. It was very banged up, and he still laid it out there for his teammates. I mean, it was helping Truex for a little while, but then Bubba Wallace there at the end. He was giving Bubba everything he could, even when Bubba ditched him. And then Ryan Blaney. I mean, I don't know of anybody in that race deserving more of that win. He was on a teammate's bumper all race. He was the team guy, and I do think that if he doesn't get blocked into the wall, he wins that race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he had a good enough car. I mean, I think his car was the exact same as the 2 car. So I tip my hat. These guys helped their teammates and didn't get all the glory, but they did well for their team. And it's odd to see Kyle Busch helping the way he helped. He does not usually, when it's down in the closing laps, he's Tony Stewart. He will dump you. He will dump his mother. I think of that story that Kurt Busch was telling about winning at Kentucky when he beat Kyle Busch. It's been like 4 or 5 years. Kurt was still with Stuart Haas.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle and Kurt rode the same airplane. And because Kurt beat him, Kyle took off and left Kurt there. So that's I would expect Kyle to do something like that. I have a mixed opinion on who Kyle Busch is as a person, but anyway. So let's talk about next week's show.
Okay.
We're going to have Fontana coverage. We'll give you the results. I'm trying to get Jerry Punch for next Monday. Dr. Jerry Punch. Matt Tift is still a yes to go sometime soon. He's trying to work us into his schedule. He's a busy guy. He owns an underfunded, underemployed team, so he ends up doing a lot of the stuff that Hendrick usually pays money for, some other guy. So he's a busy guy. We're trying. Without a doubt, Blaney would have won. Yeah, I definitely agree. He definitely put Blaney up in the wall. But see, I don't know who I'm talking to. Is it Renee or Dusty?
It's probably Dad. It's probably Dad.
I would assume, but how you doing, Dusty? I haven't been skateboarding, if that helps you out anyway. I gave that up a long time ago. You see, my head's still intact. But I think we're good, man. I think we've had a good show. We are trying to get Dr. Jerry Punch for next Monday. We'll start getting drivers in the next few weeks. It's early at the start of the year because they're doing a lot of extra stuff at the shop, trying to prepare for the upcoming weeks. And then once the cars they're ready, the teams are ready, then they have time for stuff like the show. So
yeah,
we will be there. We're going to have guys coming on the show, special guests. I'm excited. I think this is a good show. Close us off. You got anything?
I'm looking forward to Fontana. I like the way this car is. I think Fontana, I'm calling it. It's going to be a 8 or a 9 out of 10 race. I'm calling it right now.
If it's anything less than 8, I might start covering soccer. I have high expectations here.
I might just have to go to wrestling to get my sport fixed in.
If you're going to go to something fake, I don't know. I was going to say, I feel like boxing's kind of fake sometimes too.
Yeah, the main fights probably.
I don't know. Anyway, it's been a good show. Glad you guys joined us. Don't forget to check out other shows on the ASAT Sports Network. They have the Roku channel, Tiki Live TV, Apple TV, Amazon Prime. They have their channel on the Amazon network. Facebook, YouTube. They're doing a lot of things. Please check them out. Check out some of these shows. If you're into any other sport, I mean, they've got one for practically everything but cricket. So check them out. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365 5, we making up plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.